Welcome to Leadogo Lunch, Tales of Human Connection, a podcast about connecting wisdom with passion, experience with curiosity, and building the bridge from today to tomorrow. Each week, we uncover unique knowledge and wisdom from the people all around us by talking about the things that matter most in life. Be prepared to be inspired and get energized by the power of human connection with me, your host, Matt Hawksley. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. We got a great show today. Welcome to Leadogo Lunch, Tales of Human Connection. I'm Matt Hawksley. Today, we got a great and interesting topic, cybersecurity in the remote workplace. Obviously, working virtually, working from home is a common thing today. There's a lot of things that we need to start thinking about as we move forward into this new reality. So today, we got a special guest host, one of Leadogo's own, Nick O'Neill. He's our own cybersecurity expert and also our operations hub. He is going to be facilitating a conversation today with four great panelists that have a lot of great intellectual capital and knowledge about this specific and ever important topic. So welcome aboard, everybody. Nick, good to see you.
Thank you, Matt.
All right.
Go ahead, Matt.
Take it away, my friend.
So like Matt mentioned, this morning we're going to be talking about cybersecurity in the remote workforce. We've got with us Lonnie Nagel, who is the Associate CIO and CISO for Texas A&M University, Kingsville. His teams oversee the cybersecurity response for all their campuses. We've also got Matt Schwartz, the Director of Information Systems for Shelter Insurance Companies, which operates agencies across multiple states in addition to multiple international interests. Good to have you. Next, we've got Alex Lauerman, who's a founding member of Trust Foundry and SecKC, as well as being an active member of the cybersecurity community through other cybersecurity organizations. Thank you, Alex. And then we've got Dr. Bright, who is head of cybersecurity services for Internet Solutions Kenya. Good to have you, Dr. Bright. And so what we're going to start off with here, I just want to dive right in and talk about what it's been like as you guys have been moving to remote workforces. Specifically, we're going to start with Lonnie here. Lonnie, you just recently made the switch to a remote workforce. So what has been your struggles with that?
So first thing that happened was IT wasn't prepared. I mean, nobody prepared for this thing, right? The closest thing they even came near this was the Y2K thing back in 2000. Everybody was freaking out then, but this one this one was the big one. It's a unique situation, and people don't like to be isolated from each other. So the people part of it has been something that was unexpected for us, right? There's anxiety sets in all over the place. Where at one time, Texas A&M Kingsville is part of the A&M system in the state of Texas. There are 10 agencies and 12 universities, comprising 150,000 students and, I don't know, probably at least 10,000 or more employees. So getting a grip around that, at this particular location where we once were taking care of 1,000 faculty, staff, and members on campus, now we're taking care of at least 900 of them from wherever they happen to be. That's posed quite a challenge. I think originally, the university said, okay, well, everybody's going to work from home. Well, the reality is that IT can't really do that. We've ended up doing more work and more hours on campus than we were doing prior to this. A lot of it is calming fears. People are irritable. When something doesn't work, we're fielding calls from my campus laptop won't let my scanner from home hook up. I mean, short of making house calls. So we've adopted some various tools. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of BombGuard, but we've bought a whole bunch of BombGuard licenses to where we can remote into people's whatever it is at home and assist them. But it's a slow, tedious process. People call the help desk, they need help now, and they don't get help now, right? They get a ticket, gets put in a queue, and we have a tech, he gets them taken care of, but for the most part, they're not real happy. They are also facing, how to go from teaching 80% of our courses on campus to 90% of them online. I mean, it's a huge change for all of them also. So those are some of the issues that happen very fast. Day one, it was like, we have to transition from teaching most of the courses on campus to most of the courses online in 24 hours. So that was a huge push at that point. I think, at some point this will be over and we're going to have to do a lessons learned report at some point. I don't know about you guys, but we weren't ready for something of this magnitude. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue. So, Matt, kind of jumping off that, I mean, obviously, you guys aren't quite as big as all that, but from the private sector, what's been your struggles?
Yeah, so some similar issues and things that have come up, like Lonnie talked about. We really, if this would have happened a year and a half ago, we'd be having a much different conversation. So on the positive side, we had, from a technology and a security standpoint, been moving towards enabling workers to be remote. Our business model as an insurance company, we've got a lot of claims adjusters that already work out of their house. They're field workers. Our insurance sales agents are really remote workers. There's 1,400 different offices they're running a small business out of. So while the movement to remote was abrupt, a lot of the technology pieces with Microsoft Teams and VPN services and the shift from desktops to laptops put us in a better position. On the security side, it's really, as our group works with IT and other business partners, it's been a little bit of a shift. There's been some positive and some negatives, where we've got to be involved with a lot more things because we're doing on the fly problem solving, which is great. And getting information security involved in those conversations is a really good thing. And it's also pushing some things to the forefront. Lonnie talked about BombGuard. We've had some things in kind of in the backlog around co-management and things you can do with Microsoft and Intune, and those things are going to be coming kind of more to the surface as we've had to say, how can we still provide, whether it's IT service or service to our customers when we're not in the office. Part of our business, we have a lot of mailing, so we've had to do some shifting around. Where we're located, we were considered an essential business, so we try to limit people interaction in the office. But we went from our home office, about 1,200 people, down to about 70 people in a matter of 4 or 5 days. And the big jump was from 1,200 to about 120, and then whittled it down from there. So it's been interesting the last 3 weeks or so, but it's I would say for the most part we've kind of settled in, and then have really done a lot of communication. That's a big thing I would say, is you can't over communicate in a time like this, whether it's about security. We went ahead and published some guidelines for remote work to help people kind of understand their responsibilities from a security standpoint. And we're seeing a lot from our HR folks with employee engagement and inclusion, just continuing to get those messages out, because this is different for people. A lot of people, I've always went in the office, didn't ever think I would want to work from home, but this is where I am now. So we've been trying to do a lot of those interpersonal things as well.
That's good that you guys are continuing to push that message. And I'm definitely with you. My wife and I are both working from home, and it can be a struggle sometimes. So I do wonder though, what would you, if you had to pick one thing that was your single biggest struggle? We'll start with Matt and then go to Lonnie. Moving to a remote workforce, what do you think that would be?
I think it's that mix of managed and unmanaged devices. Lonnie hit on it a little bit with, somebody's got a computer, they're trying to use their work computer to get to a home scanner. Um, to just when you look at security controls and settings, when you're used to, okay, these machines are only in a corporate environment, and now they're outside of this corporate environment. That's probably been our biggest struggle. I think, like Lonnie mentioned, with lessons learned, this is probably, in my mind, not the time that you want to go to your executive team and say, well, we really should have done this, or we should have been doing that. It's a time to be taking notes, creating documents, because there will be a period for lessons learned where we're going to be able to say, how can we provide a better user experience for remote work? How can we do a better job outlining the difference between the way people can work on a managed machine or an unmanaged machine? I don't think that time is right now. I think it's in the next month or two, depending on how things shake out with the spreading of the virus.
And what about you, Lonnie? What do you think has been your biggest struggle?
So one of my, probably the largest struggle was getting people who had no concept of how to work from home, getting them ramped up on getting back to the campus to do the things they need to do. VPN is one of those tools. For the most part, VPN was used by IT and a few other people. On day one, it became 800 people are going, how do I VPN? So it was a crash course in writing documentation that anybody could understand. I mean, it was several versions. I think the document ended up being 16 pages of press this, do this, click here at that point. So we have managed to get those people in. Here again, they weren't real happy about it. One of the other struggles was I was really amazed at how many people do not have a computing device at home. I was shocked. So at that point, it's like, how do we get a hold of X number of laptops as fast as we can? And by the time we realized that this was an issue, I don't think anybody can buy a laptop anywhere in the country right today. Yeah. So it was, how do we get those devices to the people that actually need them? The campus closed and said, you're not here unless you're an essential person, right? So those were the issues that we came up with. The whole work from home concept, everybody talks about how great would that be, right? I think after 3 weeks, for most people, it's like, I don't think I really like this so much. You're in isolation, you're used to socializing with other people in the workplace. There's all those issues that we had to deal with and are currently dealing with.
Well, let's pivot off that just a little bit. You've mentioned VPN, you've mentioned BombGuard. Let's talk about some of the extra steps that you're taking to secure people. You guys have a pretty big security operations center, don't you?
Oh yeah. Well, we've got the centralized A&M operations center, and that provides tools for us like Cisco Umbrella, which is more or less web filtering and checking places they go to, but incorporating all of those from all campuses through the Security Operations Center. So that part was mostly in place. One of the things we had to deal with was people that are connecting back to us from whatever device it may be at home. So we had to quickly ramp up the NAC, the network access control piece of the VPN, which caused more irritation. I mean, I can't get on the VPN because I'm running Windows 95 and it won't let me, or Windows 7 or whatever it is, you know. I don't have operating system updates. I don't have antivirus definitions. All of these things, that was a huge part of, we can't let that stuff in.
Yeah.
So.
That's a pretty big struggle for a public institution, right? Is
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
have a whole lot of control over that.
So especially faculty members, especially PhDs, they really don't like to be told they can't do something. I'm not sure about Dr. Bright, but I know our PhDs, they don't care for it at all.
Yeah. So Matt, from the flip side, the private institution, you have better control over that?
So yeah, from what Lonnie's talking about with posturing, we can take probably some harder stances on, if you're not running a supported operating system, you're not, you don't have antivirus. We've really have two methods for remote access with remote desktop service. So from a unmanaged device where they can remote into their device that's still at the office. And then we put up some guards around, essentially they can't move data from that managed device to their managed device. And then the VPN piece. The good news for us is we had done some things with multi-factor authentication about a few years ago that helped us be in a position to where we didn't have to sacrifice some of the security controls because those requirements were already in place. So if you want to use the VPN and you don't have your multi-factor set up, then you're going to need to get that set up. So, I mean, one of the lessons learned we had was I didn't realize, so we have some self-service with multi-factor where people, if you change phones, you can walk through repairing your device. How many people had changed phones in the last couple of years since we did the original rollout, and that people did not do a lot of self-service. So there were a lot of help desk calls those first couple of days on, hey, I've got a different phone and I need to repair my device. So, I mean, we work through those things. Just looking at remote technology, and I think we're going to talk about it a little later on about boundaries is, as we look at security tools and understand that this environment of firewalls or a data center or just a corporate office is really not the reality we live in anymore. So as security teams and security leaders, we have to look at putting the tools in our tool belt that align with what our business is doing. So, Ryan talked about Cisco Umbrella, it's a good product that we use Zscaler for web filtering, and we're in a better position because all these managed devices that just ran out from our buildings in home office and branch office have the app on the device, and whether they're running from Panera internet or their internet at home, we still have strong security controls, malware sandboxing, typical web filtering type controls on those devices, even though they're not in our office anymore. So it's a lot of basic security hygiene stuff with multi-factor and making sure that we do good asset management still. That's that could be a challenge with a remote workforce. But I think those are on the private side and for public companies too. Those are just challenges that we have to continue to work through, continue to mature, and continue to get better.
Yeah.
So we also went through the Duo thing, going from not being used a whole lot on campus. I think we've got a few spots that in order to access some of our systems, you needed to go through Duo. To everyone had to go through dual factor authentication coming in through the VPN. Went through the same, I'm not getting the push. My phone has changed. I don't have a phone. Sending my approval to my desk phone, all of that, all the way down to some of the things today are, can somebody go to my office and turn on my PC? And that's kind of what our day-to-day looks like currently. After the mad rush of taking care of everybody that needed the tools that we could provide to do all this, Now it's down to the day-to-day mundane things of, okay, go turn on this guy's PC, reset this guy's dual factor authentication, call this person because they're locked, they can't get in because of such and such. So that, oddly enough, most of the IT people, especially in desktop support, were working at home. They're now working on campus. So
Sounds like a lot of housekeeping.
yeah.
So let's pivot off that a little bit. We talked about some of the operating versions, some of the struggles in the organization. Alex, how does that change your, from an offensive security side? How do you change your penetration test based on the fact that it's a remote workforce?
It changes things slightly. I mean, when the organization moves from a primarily on-site to primarily remote, it doesn't, I mean, as our job is to represent attackers, and attackers don't care where they find vulnerabilities at. So we have to look thoroughly across all scenarios. So our primary kind of, the way we approach things doesn't really change a whole lot. Having said that, it's possible some additional services will be exposed and stood up, like a VPN, or I heard that a lot of RDP got exposed kind of overnight when everybody shifted remote. Things like that. Those are services that we would definitely attack if we found them, and they might be out there now and they weren't out there a month ago. So that's one thing that would change the way we go about things, but we're still going to look for RDP either way and attack it either way. It's just a matter of what we actually find out there. There are things like it actually kind of makes, so a remote and distributed environment is actually typically more difficult for us to attack and break into, because if we end up attacking, let's say Matt, and he is at home and he's not on the VPN, let's say we fully compromise his endpoint, but he's not on a VPN and he doesn't have access to everything that he would when he's in the office, then it makes our job as attackers actually more difficult in some scenarios. There are some advantages as well, though, from like social engineering and stuff like that. Our fear as attackers is when we're like sending malicious emails or making malicious phone calls. Our fear in our heads is always that, oh, they're going to catch on to us. Someone's going to say something over their cue ball, and we can't make a second phone call because this is our one shot, because they're going to know that they're onto us, or they're going to respond to our phish immediately. So we're always fearful of kind of the closeness of communication inside corporations, organizations, include you, Lonnie. So that's kind of our fear of attackers, and that becomes less of an issue if we know that everybody's at home. So I think those are the kind of the primary things. It changes. People are moving to more SaaS solutions, things like that as well. Like BombGuard, which is, I guess, maybe, I'm not sure if that technically qualifies as SaaS, but there are different pieces of software for us to attack, and that the attack surface changes a little bit as well. But I guess the short answer is, overall, it doesn't change our jobs drastically. It just kind of morphs things a little bit.
Okay. Can you take a step back just a little bit and maybe explain for some of us in the audience that don't work in information security, like, what is RDP? What is SaaS?
Sure. So RDP is remote desktop. It enables people to. It's the built-in basically protocol on every Windows machine that allows you to connect from one Windows machine to another. That's all RDP. SaaS is software as a service. So things like, well, I might butcher this definition, but things like GitHub, Slack, things like this, software that you're buying, paying a monthly subscription for, and using within your corporation, are SaaS solutions. And those are a little harder for us to attack than a typical, like a domain services. When 10 years ago, when everything was just authenticated internally on the domain, you didn't have to worry about really two sets of credentials. It was just compromise one endpoint and it was kind of game over. But if you need to get into GitHub or something like that, if that's our end goal as an attacker, then it's we have to be a little more targeted in how we get there. So those are examples of SaaS solutions and how we find them a little bit more difficult to attack and obtain access to compared to direct, a traditional corporate network from 15 legacy corporate network.
Yeah, and so I understand this correctly. The reason that the SaaS solution is a little bit harder for you is because it's hosted elsewhere, and the security is usually a little bit better than something that's hosted by the enterprise.
Yeah, and it's distributed as well. So they might have a different set of, we don't know, it's hosted else somewhere else. We don't know what you're using. We don't know you're using BombGuard. We don't know you're using Bitbucket versus GitHub. We don't know what to attack necessarily. If we want a company's source code, we might get all the way through have to look around the corporate network thoroughly and not find it, and then realize, okay, they're using GitHub, and then have to figure out, okay, who has access to GitHub? How do we get into there? So it's the security can be better on a lot of those very trusted third-party applications, but the main thing is it's a separate set of credentials. It's a separate location. We kind of have to find our way to get there as an attacker.
Excellent, thank you. So, Dr. Bright, how does that work from your perspective? You do a lot of outreach. You do a lot of work talking about these different solutions.
Yeah. So right now it's a little bit different. Everybody got caught off guard, and there's so many things that were unexpected. Currently, let me tell you something, is so many companies don't even know what a business continuity plan is. They don't have it, or it's been thought about, but they've never written that. They've never tried it out. They've never tried the disaster recovery. They've never tried out their offsite backups. They've never tried to switch off one system to move to the other. It's becoming a very difficult kind of concept for them. We've been talking about VPNs and the likes, but a lot of people don't know that now using their personal laptops, for example, is giving access to hackers into their own private networks. So hackers are about to take a lot of, they're taking so many approaches right now. Look at it this way. The amount of Zoom alone, let's talk about Zoom, phishing sample domains that came up the other day were like almost over hundreds of them. Phishing attacks are increasing. Most of the clients that I work with did not even know that they need to start doing active monitoring of their network or the systems. It's becoming a new concept for them. So, and also email security to say. So everybody got caught off guard, but that doesn't stop the work that we're doing, engaging clients, with all the virtual meetings that we're having, and have to give them security advisory. Advisory services have now become the main thing that we're working with, rather than the normal, everyday, relaxed mode of being in a boardroom and talking about all the security challenges. So it's a win for the security industry, but also it makes things a little bit more difficult than usual. So it's not business as usual anymore. Everybody has to be alert right now. Threat intelligence, monitoring, even anti-malware solutions has become a thing, because people are getting malware phishing links sent to them, or emails have been attached and then they believe it's real. Open it, hackers are getting access to their machines and then using that as a way to leverage and do pivoting into their internal networks. This is some of the things that we need to start thinking about and have proactivity been moving on. Yeah.
Let me add one thing. Sorry,
Yeah.
Nick.
That's
So what we've seen, that all of the bad guys have taken advantage of this unique situation to just bombard everyone with phishing and malware and click here's and are you there emails, and as everybody knows what the are you there is, right? Once you get a response, half the job is done, right? Go buy me some gift cards, go do whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and we've just seen, it's unbelievable how much of that stuff that we're catching. And I'm sure there's a significant amount that we're not catching. I mean, they're using their personal email accounts at home on whatever device. I have no idea what they're doing to their own machines at home by virtue of work at home.
Yeah. So have you guys taken any steps to kind of control the versions of Windows that are on the different machines?
Yeah, I think Windows 7 went end of support January 14th. We've got asset inventory systems that scan the devices connected to the network, and we are able to identify things that are out of date, old versions of Windows. So, and I think we were mostly good to go by January 14th on the operating systems. It's still a daily struggle on making sure that everybody does the other updates. Oddly enough, we find that when we push security patches and it requires a reboot, we will have people that will click the not now button for months. I mean, instead of just letting it happen, it's just not now, not now, not now. We don't have the luxury of forcing a reboot in a university setting. As soon as we do, somebody's research data is going to be compromised and it won't be good. So we're doing things like sending pop-ups every day to these machines at 3 p.m. that says, hey, you know you need to reboot every single day. We're sending that. We're sending emails weekly. Hey, you know you need to reboot. So those are just some of the things that we're going through.
Yeah, and everybody always gets frustrated by those pop-ups, but it really is super important in security. Matt, you guys in the private sector have a little bit more control, like we talked about before. How do you handle, if you're in an organization and you want somebody to reboot their machine, do you just do it for them overnight?
Oh yeah. I mean, we have to. You balance those things out. I mean, obviously, we don't have researchers, or I feel for folks who have a CISO role in healthcare. When you're working with physicians, it's kind of a whole different ballgame too. But yeah, we have the ability to force reboots when we need to. We do try to. Again, it's about communication. So telling people, hey, we're going to reboot overnight. We give you a few days heads up and the reminder, make sure you're saving things. So that is important. We're talking a little bit about security awareness and threat intel, and I think this is it's always important, but especially at a time like this, as a security organization, making sure that we're communicating our awareness message consistently with our end users. We're going to go from COVID-19 vaccine type phishing emails to, in the U.S., this IRS stimulus pack. I mean, there are going to be, and they're already out there, phishing emails around, hey, give us your bank account number and you'll get your stimulus payment faster. So it's really important for the security folks to be watching those things and communicating and say, look, we may have sent you an email last week about phishing threats, but that's okay because we're giving you some real intel. We've really tried to take an approach to say any security awareness message that we give should be presented in a way that our employee could share it with their friends and family, unless it's something really specific about the company, because I think that's a more powerful message where if I'm hearing something, I go, hey, that applies to me, but it also applies to my friend, my neighbor, my family, my grandma, my grandpa. I'm going to share that out. Then I think as a security community, that's more beneficial than just really specific details that people are going to ignore or not share with other people.
If I may add on to that, this is also the time that a lot of insider threats are going to increase. Right now, people inside organizations are usually the attack method. They usually enforce it to external hackers being able to get inside. Right now, the support staff who might be in the organization, for example, like a bank, who have been given connectivity to external hackers to be able to get in and steal money and the likes. Right now is when they're going to do that. So a lot of active monitoring needs to be done, of which most of them don't even look for that. Aside from looking for the internal stuff, is also have to look at the perimeter security right now. People start leaving out, they start leaving their servers open to make it much easier to work remotely. But again, that's going to be leaving out a lot of security loopholes for people to take advantage of. If you go to Shodan right now, Shodan, which being a search engine for you to be able to search for some of these publicly available servers. It's quite easy for you to be able to see some of them. So many ports are getting more open, so many services, like what you said about the RDP services. There's so many that we can discover publicly, and most people are not aware that some of these services are actually easily identifiable by external users who are not even authorized to do that.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. What does that look like from an attacker standpoint? How do you gain that kind of information?
I mean, the publicly available tools that you can use to search, apart from using Google Dorking, which is an easy way for you to search for some of these services, that's one easy way. There's also Shodan, there's Census, there's ZoomEye, which are services that allow you to look for such vulnerable services. For example, I can right now say that I want to search for every port 22 that is open, or an RDP port, or something that is a particular port that is open in a particular country. And you see so many servers that are just there even without passwords. You'll find Windows Server systems they have very weak, simple password, which is the same as the organizational password. And anybody can get access to it. It's publicly available. And these tools are not illegal to use. They're very legal. They're very legal for you to get access to it. It's a simple account you have to register for that. So people have automated all of these using a few Python scripts here and there. You should be able to actually gain access to majority of the things and do a mass scan and get quick results and see what are the ones that are open. People's routers are open to the houses, and with the kind of connectivity now from homes, it allows them to be able to get into people's homes, take over their network. And the attack methodologies are now, they're quite vast.
And so these systems, like you mentioned, Census and Shodan, these are freely available.
It's a breakage right now. I can't hear you.
I said the services that you mentioned, like Shodan and Census, these are freely available. I can search any IP for any port. And just to clarify, a port is essentially what a service typically runs on. So like RDP is going to be your remote connection to the office, typically runs on 3389. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So
yeah, just to add that they have some like professional, there's a lot of companies in that space that have like some free access, and then if you want to run a certain number of queries, or they have professional services as well. But yeah, a lot of that can be done for free. And that's important for a lot of organizations to do, is to monitor that, because what we find is a lot of organizations, maybe all organizations, don't know what assets they actually have, or they think they know, but they aren't sure what assets they actually have out there. So they might have just kind of shadow IT, where people are they might be using GitHub but not knowing it, or someone might be spinning up servers somewhere in Azure that they don't know about, things like that are important to identify. And some of those you can find on Shodan or Census or Google, those type of locations. So it's definitely important to monitor, continue as it was before, continue to monitor and try to find assets that exist out there that belong to your organization, especially if you don't know about them.
And that's a really good segue. Tell me a little bit about, like, if you're going to perform a penetration test against a company like a Shelter or a Texas A&M, how do you start? What's your attack methodology there?
The first thing we do, it depends what our goal is. So we work with the customers on that and figure out what our goal is and what they want us to do and what they want us to simulate. But generally, the first things that we do are what we just talked about there, where it's called OSINT, or open source intelligence, where we use Google, and I just type different Google queries about Shelter and into GitHub and Google, and there's some tools in addition to that do enumeration and just try to identify anything that's out there. As an attacker, and this is what a lot of bug bounty hunters do as well, is try to find just obscure things that are out there on the internet. Dev stage 2 .api.shelter.insurance.com or whatever, some obscure asset, and I think, okay, that's something that's probably not as secure as their www. I'm gonna look at that. So those are kind of the first steps if we're just approaching an organization from the outside and beginning to figure out a way in. But a lot of things like we talked about earlier, where it's just wide scale phishing, and things like that are effective as well. It just kind of depends on what we're trying to do. And obviously we work with our customers on that. Real attackers, figure out things based off of their, their time and interests, but we're, coordinating with our customers on those things.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
just
okay.
to add on to what he was saying, penetration testing. At A&M, we have a security operations center. We can do penetration testing weekly for weeks on end if we want. It basically points at all outward-facing devices and identify the vulnerabilities that exist on things coming in from whatever our footprint is on the outside of our firewalls. We've got an edge firewall. We've got an edge IDS. All of that then gets down to the server farm, where we also have a physical firewall at that point. Coming in are users from the outside. They get to their desktop from home via VPN. At that point, they have access to only what their office desktop has. Now, it doesn't prevent all things from happening, but it prevents most things from happening. Nobody has direct access to the server farm via VPN from anywhere.
Sure.
So, we protect those assets like that. We do things like air gap backups. In case of ransomware, ransomware could potentially take down the entire institution, right?
Yeah.
So we run air gap backups. We run things like off-site, warm site, hot site locations. So I think security, the first thing it's going to depend on is how much money do you want to spend on it? You can go crazy with this stuff, right? Anyway.
Well, that's,
Yeah, you just wanted to close on that. There's
go ahead, Dr. Bright.
one of the very simple things that with my organization we've been testing out with a few clients right now was a simple phishing attack. And this is not even registering a new domain. It's just cloning one of their websites and spinning off their email through a different SMTP server. Basically mean that the email looks like it came from you, Nick, but it's not you. And because of your signature that we got before from that, majority of people are always clicking and they put in their passwords easily. And you'll find out that majority of them without a two-step verification or multi-factor authentication allows them to even to do that. However, even people with Office 365 or with multi-factor authentication, there are ways to be able to bypass that. And you actually will get the tools, open source applications that allows you to actually get the SMS on your phone, and you key that in, and we take that session and log in as you. That has happened over the past few weeks, and we've been testing that out, and that seems to be the easiest way to get into people's organizations in the emails, because not everybody has an email security solution to be able to watch out for what is real and what is not. Trust me, when I send that email to you, it looks exactly almost like it is your domain email, because we'll be using your own domain, but the routing of the email is going through another SMTP server, which is publicly available services, some of which allow you to send almost 40,000 emails in a day, free. So look at attackers who can take advantage of that if they know how to use that. And does not cost a thing. Doesn't cost any amount of money to be able to do this. Roughly, maybe even $20 is a lot of money to get that out for a whole month. So email phishing is getting easier and easier by the day.
So let me add one thing to that. So we find that the bad guys routinely, they'll scrape your website, right? They'll get names, they'll get addresses, they'll get phone numbers, they'll get all kinds of stuff on your internal people that work at the university. And they'll utilize that to craft these emails coming from the university president, whatever. Some of the things we've been able to do is prevent spoofing emails, where it's not coming from an address that we recognize, no matter what the name says it is, it doesn't get through. But that stuff still manages to get through, right? So yeah, that's a never-ending fight, the spoofing and the phishing and all of that. And you know, we tell the they don't want to not provide information on their public-facing website, but that's a number one source for bad guys to collect information, reconnaissance on their next target.
Absolutely.
I can guarantee you right now, the number of, with all the 49 attendees that I hear, I can guarantee you 80% of them don't have what you call the SPF and DMARC records set properly. Meaning, some of them can be phished and they can be impersonated. And all of those can be done with very simple tools, and which are all open source applications.
Yeah,
Right.
Dr. Bright, we started working on that a few years ago with DKIM and DMARC settings, and yeah, it's a balancing act of risk, right? Where we have a marketing arm of our organization where there are certain people that we know are sending email on our behalf, and it was a very tedious process to go through that, but it is doable. And I mean, that would be my message is, you know, you can't go and just say set P equals reject right out the gate and say, okay, I got email authentication stuff figured out, because you're going to break things. But you do have to go through and say, who is sending on my behalf that I know about? What's our process going to be in the future for working with our business partners when they say, hey, well, now we want to use Constant Contact or Salesforce to send these emails. Okay, what's the process to do that? But it is doable. And like you said, it's very easy for attackers to use those mail relay servers to send as an organization or an institution. But the security control is not expensive or hard. It's just more about the process of actually doing it.
But it can be, right? You know, part of what I wanted to talk about in this is the fact that you have all this money that you're throwing at security. You can buy all the tools, all the bells and whistles you want. The attackers have the advantage in that they can do it usually cheaper than you can. And we use all these things to kind of build a perimeter, right, around the organization and make it so that everybody feels safe on the inside. As everybody's moved remotely, those services, those protections are often strained. And we've talked about some of the availability of data that you can get to freely. For an employee in that organization, I don't feel necessarily like I'm unsafe. I'm still connecting to the network. But for you as security professionals, you recognize that now that everybody's outside, you're kind of borderless. What does that look like? How do you rebuild that trust in your security?
I think identity is so important there. I mean, it really puts that focus on the way that you do identity access management, because the user account is very, very powerful. And obviously using controls like multi-factor are important. Talking about what you said, Nick, that the attackers have free tools that they can, I talk about this all the time. The advantage the attackers will always have over us is they don't have to run a business. Their business is attacking. So they don't have to do the balancing act of, well, how is this going to impact our revenue next quarter? How's this going to impact our ability to sell insurance or provide service or whatever it is? They don't have to do that. That's not part of the calculus for them. So we're always at somewhat of a disadvantage. And that's why it's so important to make sure that whether it's budget spend or projects and priorities, we're putting things in areas where we get the most security return on investment is typically not the way you would look at return on investment in, a marketing type project. It's not a revenue centric type of metric. But when we look at like a framework like critical security controls, old SANS top 20 or NIST or whatever you're using, that's where I think looking at where you maybe have immaturities within those controls, that's where you focus. And sometimes you can do it low cost or no cost. And sometimes you have to go out and buy some tools. So I know I went off on a tangent there, but
let me continue on your tangent for a minute. So one of the huge problems is right, you're trying to protect thousands of people from an attack. From the attacker's viewpoint, he only has to get through to 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of those people. You're protecting 1,000 people. He's just trying to get to a handful, right? I think the return on phishing used to be the number was 2%. If you could get 2% return on whatever it is you were sending out, you were making money, a lot of money. So, I mean, that's the distinct disadvantage. We do things like security awareness training, October Cybersecurity Month. We have sessions and classes, and they're not very well attended, I can tell you that. However, and then people say, well, how did you let this happen to me? So end user training is, I mean, it's your cheapest and best tool. We campaign for that every day, actually.
There's something that I always tell my clients when it comes to security. The thing is, we should stop thinking about cyber security and start moving to cyber resilience, because the mindset has to change. Before, we used to think of reliability. We want to design not to fail. You're designing a network, mobile application not to fail. You're trying to prevent almost every possible attack. You can't. So you need to move to resilience, because cybersecurity, I believe, was about being able to protect, detect, and respond to attacks. But if you do cyber resilience, you're trying to identify and also recover. So identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. If you have all those elements, that become cyber resilience, whereby you can actually always predict what's going to happen before it happens. So also you need to start thinking of, you need to assume compromise. That's the thing. Most people think they can never be hacked, or they've never said hacking has happened. So usually when they ask people, have you ever been hacked before? They don't even know. You have a firewall. Does it work? You don't even know it has ever worked, because you have never tried every possible attack to see if it can go through or not. You might do a penetration testing for one element of things, but you forgot the other because the scope of work has changed. You don't even know exactly what you're looking for. So assume breach, build to be able to recover quickly as a resilience method. And like those 5 elements: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So that's what I think of when it comes to cyber resilience, for proactivity, again, rather than being reactive to when it comes to situations.
And Alex, you were going to say something, right?
Yeah, you could tell. So the one thing to keep in mind, to tie into the things that were just said by everyone, is that as an attacker, yes, we only have to get in. We only have to be right once from the outside, which is great until we're inside. Then as defenders, then Matt and Lonnie only have to catch us once to get us out of there. So we might have to compromise credentials, get on a VPN, compromise maybe a mailbox or something, get on an endpoint, compromise endpoint, get on another endpoint, get on another endpoint, get on a dev server, get SSH keys, get to GitHub, get information on GitHub, get way too much information that should set off all sorts of alarms, doing malicious things all along the way. And if they can, we're fearful the entire time that we're going to run one command that's going to get us caught. So from a defensive side, the paradigm flips, and defenders only have to be right once we're inside. So that's definitely a kind of a great point for on the defensive, and it ties into everything that Dr. Bright just said about the 5 steps or whatever that we're that can stop attackers.
Excellent. We do have a couple questions, and we're kind of running out of time. So I'll just start with Simon here. He's asking about black fog. Now, I personally haven't ever heard of that. Have any of you ever heard of black fog?
Nope.
It's funny. No, I was contacted by them just today. So I have a POC that I'm working with, but I haven't used black fog right now yet.
So they're saying that it might be a reverse, kind of like a reverse firewall. Anybody want to talk about that? So I'm assuming a reverse firewall. So firewall is going to protect you, right? It's going to block things coming in. This would maybe allow things in.
So
as honeypot.
The concept of firewall is you block everything except that which you allow. The reverse of that is allow everything except that which you block. And I don't know if I'm all on board with that.
haven't used it though. Like literally barely about 4 hours ago when they contacted me and we set up a call to have it next week. So I've never used them anyway for right now. I mean, there's so many security products, but at the end of the day, I think it's way more than the product, but rather the kind of like I tell people, like it's about people, processes, technology, and control. Being able to understand the people in the organization, what they're doing, what they're supposed to do, the processes they follow to be able to log into systems, the processes they follow to be able to make sure that security is the major thing, and the people, processes, the technologies that you have to employ to be able to make sure that whatever you're trying to use is going to work, and the controls to govern the top three. Because you can have the best technology. I heard people saying, just last week, a friend of mine, he's actually one of the guys in that, one of the attendees. We launched a command and control system and a publicly available one, which bypassed majority of antiviruses. So an antivirus will be with something which an organization will have, but we're able to bypass that, and we're able to launch and run commands on the system for almost 5 hours, and there was zero detection. All firewalls were up, every kind of maximum configuration was on, but still, it was still working. So you might have the best technology, you might spend so much money on it, but if you don't have the other controls to be able to put in place, it might not work. So tools, yes, but you have to use the right tool for the right environment. You have the biggest table, but it will not fit in every single room.
I do think that this quick shift to remote work, if people have pushed back on the concept that the perimeter is changing, I think this is going to show that yes, it has changed with SaaS solutions. I mean, really, SaaS is a big driver there of a firewall at your data center or at your corporate office doesn't do you a lot of good if your business is run by SaaS solutions and your workers aren't in that office and on that network. So I think we don't need to talk about security vendors because there are a lot of them out there, but there's going to be a shift there. And I'm not saying that traditional firewalls or physical firewalls or virtual firewalls in a location aren't important. They are important, but controlling access where your users actually access the applications, I think is going to be more important going forward.
Your biggest risk is your internal users always, right? You know, if we didn't have to have things on networks, they would be the most secure in the world.
Well, and one last thing, we got 3 minutes left. Let's talk about stress and anxiety. So as people get more stressed, these phishing emails are coming in, you're going to be more likely to click on things than you were before. Is that a concern for you all?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's always a concern for us, and it goes back to that communication piece of you. For any organization at this time, you have to find those human connections. So for our department, we're not a huge group, about 12 people. We just set up around lunchtime like a virtual water cooler, just so we can get on, not talk about work, and just have some kind of semblance of normal. So I think there are things, whether it's security or with your HR group or even wherever you sit in the organization, that you can do to reduce the stress and anxiety. Because I would agree with the statement that the more anxious you have, the more anxious a user is, the more likely they're going to be to click on something or do something that they wouldn't normally do.
And that's something that we definitely take advantage of and probably all social engineers do take advantage of that as when we're conducting those scenarios, and real attackers I think would as well, saying, hey, I'm about to get on a plane, or actually that's not a very good scenario right now. Hey, I'm at the hospital, blah, blah, blah. I have this scenario that's elaborate, and I have to give a presentation. I need my password reset right now, and so I can get on the VPN or something like that. Can you just reset it to welcome one, or just tell me over the phone what the password is. I don't have email access. Just give it to me now. I'm in a huge rush. So those types of scenarios are definitely something that us and other attackers take advantage of, and that's Lonnie was mentioning, kind of the stressed out workforce. If those weren't his exact words, but we can flip that around and use that to be more successful, and real attackers as well to be more successful in social engineering campaigns.
The easiest for me has been now about salary review. You tell everybody, you're about to review your salary, you need to fill in this form and they'll download the Excel sheet and click on anything, enable macros without knowing, or DDEs in the background. But the ultimate thing for me, for any organization, when it comes to security or resilience, is having visibility. Majority of people don't know exactly how many computers they even have in the network. They don't have any network access control to know what has been added in and who has been taken over. They don't know what traffic is going in and especially what is leaving the organization. So having visibility, having security incident and event management with security orchestration capabilities is one of the most important things that allows you to be able to narrow down 1,001 events to 0 or to 2, which is basically trying to separate signal from noise. If you can't do that, there's going to be a very difficult time for you to be able to identify exactly what is going on in your network or systems, because you can be compromised and you can see people stay in there for 90 days without having any idea that they're still in there.
One thing to add in that ties together. What's that?
One last quick thing. We're almost out of time.
Yeah, I know, and I was just gonna say, we're almost out of time, or we are out of time. If you guys want to Google learn more about this stuff, the concept, a lot of what we've been talking about is zero trust networks, where I meant to mention earlier. So if you want a term to Google on to learn more about some of the things that we've been hitting on, zero trust networks is a good thing to learn about and to consider in the architecture of your solutions.
Yeah, zero trust is fantastic. That's a good point, Alex. One thing that I wanted to say, kind of a takeaway here, is if you're operating on behalf of an organization, like Matt said, communication is key. Keep putting that out there and letting your employees know that there are steps that they can take to kind of keep themselves secure. But at the same time, from an attacker's perspective, the employee needs to make sure that they're paying attention and not clicking on things that could be malicious. And it's a constant give and take, but definitely stay ahead of the curve. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Matt so that he can announce next week's topic and kind of close this up.
Hey, we probably could have done 4 or 5 hours on this one. Just saying.
Absolutely. I think we got to get this panel back together for another one here, reunion tour. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, all of you guys there, Lonnie, Matt, Dr. Bright, and Alex. Thanks, Nick. Great job with hosting this great session. So join us next week. We're going to be having moments of inspiration, staying strong. Again, we're going to have 4 panelists talking about how they've overcome some incredible hardships. I think right now, sometimes where we focus on a lot of the negative side of things, I think it's about time we start looking at some positives as well. So look forward to seeing you all next week. And thanks again, everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining this week on Leadogo Lunch, Tales of Human Connection. Make sure to check us out again next week when we continue our journey into discussing the things that matter most. Shoot me an email if you have any feedback or would like to be a guest on the show at hawksley@leadogo.io. Until then, continue learning and growing.